Hello everyone and welcome back. I am as always Inquisitor Aura and this is how to actually roleplay in World of Warcraft. And this week we're going to start moving into some more of the advanced things you should know about roleplaying, specifically roleplaying events. This video is going to be your introduction into actually creating role-playing events for your friends or your guild. Now keep in mind that this guide is going to be working off of the assumption that you are in a guild or in a dedicated role-playing group where this sort of situation would take place, and it's only going to cover the initial steps and thinking processes of creating the role-playing event itself. Actual in-depth roleplay event creation videos are going to follow this one up. For those of you who are familiar with any form of tabletop role-playing games like D&D or Pathfinder or anything of that nature, if you've ever actually run a campaign or been a part of a campaign, you've seen the GM put in some hefty amount of work into actually creating a story and an event for the players to enjoy. A lot of the stuff that I'm going to be covering here is going to be very similar if you do any of those things, so just bear with me for a little bit. What you need to keep in mind when you first start thinking about maybe taking on the role of a game master or a dungeon master or whatever you prefer to call it in World of Warcraft is that every event that you run should have a story. After all, role-playing is 150% about telling a story. Now, when I start thinking about events that I would like to run for my guild, I like to create event series where I tell a story over a set scheduled number of role-playing events. I've done short ones that have taken 1 or 2 events to complete, and I've done longer ones that have taken several weeks to resolve. To do this, to get started really, you need to think about what the group's ultimate goal is going to be. You want to make sure that the story itself is interesting, you want to make sure it's engaging, and you want to make sure that your players are going to have as much fun as possible. The first thing that I do when I'm starting off with making a role-playing event for my guild is I think about what the group's ultimate goal is going to be. Are they going to be tracking down a potent enemy? Do they need to retrieve a powerful artifact of some kind? Are they trying to capture or retake a location? General broad ideas of, this is what I want my people to be thinking about when they're in this event. There has to be a very clear, very defined goal at the end that is the center of the entire story that you are trying to run. For the sake of this video, we're gonna come up with a very basic plot line for you to potentially use. For this, we're just going to say that your players are going to hunt down a potent enemy. The process you use to come up with these events is gonna remain mostly the same no matter what you end up deciding to do, so it doesn't really make a difference, but this will make it easier for me to illustrate exactly my thought process and how I do things. Okay, so now that you've gotten your end game out of the way, your boss, there's a bad guy you want them to find, you want them to chase, you want them to beat. You're creating a boss. Now you need to establish motivation, not just for your boss, but for your players. Focus first on the boss. What is the boss's goal? This is what your players are going to want to stop. They're going to want to prevent. They're going to want to interfere with as much as possible. But you want it to be dangerous enough that it's going to pique their interest. Players like stories, players like danger, players like hunting down the bad guy or good guy if you run that way. And being as involved in that person's plans and story and life as possible. Perhaps more importantly, however, is how your boss is going to attempt to achieve his or her goal. And this is the hook right here. This is how you get the players really kind of into it. This is where event development starts taking place. This is where you decide if this story is going to be a one-shot or if it's going to be multi-chapter. And this is where you start getting creative. This is where you plot the steps your boss is going to take to achieve his or her goals and determine the overall story itself. So, say you think that your boss is looking for a powerful artifact that he can use to enslave others to the service of the old gods. It seems pretty baseline, standard WoW kind of story, right? Now that you figure out that, now you can start figuring out how the boss is going to do that. Maybe the boss doesn't know where this artifact is. And over the course of a couple of events, or maybe you do something really small at the very beginning, you leak it to your players or somebody who may potentially be interested in like old gaudy kinds of things and be like, hey, look, this is what you ran into. This is where you start thinking about involving your players, because players should be involved in every step of your story. Getting them invested early ensures that you have future attendance to events, and it keeps everybody engaged. Looking at the steps that your boss is going to take to achieve his goal is going to teach you and show you the things that you need to have available to the players as they progress through this story. The players, once they're on to the boss's end game, they're going to want to investigate. They're going to want to figure out what he's found out, how he found it out, where he found it out. And all three of these things are extraordinarily important. What he found out is going to give them the ammunition they need to make their next steps. Things that they're going to plan on trying to do to compensate for whatever your boss is doing. Where they find it will also go a long way with helping with that, but it also gives you a reason to get them out into the world and exploring places they may not necessarily have been to. I have been known to actually go into raids, old school raids, like Bastion of Twilight, and clear the place out just so that I could bring an RP group in with me and have the whole place be empty, so you have all of that extra stuff in there to run around in and goof around in. And people really like locational based sorts of things like that. How they find it out is just as important. You don't want to feed them a whole lot of information. You don't want events to be nothing but exploitation and exposition and stuff like that. You don't want that, because people like doing the investigation and they like finding out what is actually going on here. So what you want to do is you kind of want to lead them around a little bit. You know, you drop a little breadcrumb here, a little breadcrumb there. You give them little nibbles of the story as you progress, and let them figure out exactly what your boss is doing, because of course you already know all of this stuff because it's your boss and you're the GM and you're amazing like that. But giving them the thrill of the hunt, of the investigation, is going to ensure a happy crew for a very long time. From here, the shape of your story starts becoming more and more of what you want to present to people. People want investigation, but they also want combat, and it's at this point in time that you can start deciding where they fight the boss, if they fight the boss, if the boss has minions, where they locate him, where they locate their information, and what they do about it. Now, players, almost as a universal whole, tend to throw things, plans, GM plans, right out the damn window. So try to remember to keep your plans as loose as possible. You want to have a general idea of what the boss is going to be doing and what he has at his disposal and where he's going to be. But for the most part, you don't want to lock down too many hard details, because your players are going to come in and they're just going to wreck all your damn plans. So being flexible is extremely important when running and creating role-playing events, because you want them to have fun, but you also want to be able to have fun as well. And it's really entertaining seeing some of the plans that players come up with, because you get a group together and they can think box plans that you would just sound insane until you actually get like 5 or 6 people together and they work it out. And you really want to give that to them. It is part of your responsibility as a GM or DM to ensure that they're having as much fun as you are. And by leaving that a little bit more fluid, leaving your story a little bit more detail nebulous, it gives them a lot more room to actually try things out, to think outside of the normal WoW role-playing box and actually get into like a little bit of developing their characters. Like maybe they discover they have interests in the old gods they didn't have before. And it allows you to more customize the encounters around the groups that you're going to have with you, because you may not have the same group of people every time you decide you're going to run an event in your storyline, but it allows you to, keep the flow going with it and still be able to maintain the story while keeping everybody as happy as possible. Now, everything I just talked about, I know it might seem to be a lot and it might seem to be daunting, but really, take it from me, it's not when you break it down. This video was not for breaking down the exact processes, but it's to give you an idea of where your mind should be when you decide to start thinking about things like this. It's about where your thoughts should be wandering off to, things you should be considering if you decide you do want to eventually run events for your guilds or for your friends. The next few videos in this series are going to go into much greater detail, and I will even show you guys some of my notes on how I come up with things. Now remember, this is how I do things, and not everybody does things the same way that I do, but I think this would be a good starting point for you to come up with your own method and plans for your own stories. And I really hope that this is helpful to everyone, because I love telling the story as much as I love living it, and I want to share that with everybody here. I want everybody to have the opportunity to tell the best story that they can for their friends in World of Warcraft. Well, that is going to be it from me for this week. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember, if you like what you see and you want to see more, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to comment below, and don't forget to subscribe. I also have a Patreon. The link is in the description box below, as well as up in my channel header art. So if you want to help me improve my video quality, make sure you stop on by and donate. Remember, your donations go directly to things to improve the quality of my videos and may lead to more videos per week. Anyways, guys, thank you again so much for watching. Have a great week, have a great weekend, and I will see you again in Azeroth.